The U.S. President Donald Trump has spent his first full day in office by meeting congressional leaders at the White House after issuing a slew of executive orders from climate to immigration.
And Mr. Trump earlier today also announced a huge private sector AI infrastructure investment alongside OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle called Stargate.
New American company that will invest $500 billion at least in AI infrastructure in the United States and very, very quickly, moving very rapidly, creating over 100,000 American jobs almost immediately.
The 47th U.S. president also announced plans to fire some 1,000 Biden appointees in what observers have described as a shock and awe start to his administration.
For more insight on President Trump's first day in office and what we can expect in the coming days and weeks, let's speak now with Vikram Nehru. He's a distinguished practitioner in residence at Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. Vikram, thank you very much for joining us. Firstly, I want to get your reaction to the rapid series of executive orders we've been seeing so far, with more likely on the way. Just how far do you think President Trump will be willing to take these actions, and what kind of second-term presidency can we infer from these early moves?
Well, it certainly was a huge number. I counted about 40-odd executive orders. As you said, the Republicans have termed this shock and awe, and the Democrats have termed this shock and awful. There's virtually every promise and campaign promise that Trump announced during the election, he has more or less delivered, except for a very few, and some already are being challenged in the courts. About 20-odd challenges have been placed in courts for the birthright citizenship executive order. As to what's going to happen later, I think we're going to continue to see very strong action on the part of President Trump. I think on February the 1st, we might see some announcements on tariffs against Canada and Mexico. It's nice to see that perhaps he is waiting for some negotiation with China, although now, as your earlier piece pointed out, it's quite possible that he may announce some tariffs on February the 1st in China as well. I think as far as the rest of the 4 years are going to be concerned, this is going to be a presidency which will try to undo many of the reforms introduced by the previous Democratic administrations, especially by Biden's, but also Obama's, and prior to that, Clinton's. So it's going to be a very, very unsettling or perhaps a very volatile 4 years going forward.
Indeed, let's take a look at some of them. So the fresh developments are that Donald Trump has announced 10% tariffs on China. Pre-inauguration, he floated the idea of 60% tariffs. So your thoughts on this latest figure? At the same time, that 25% on Canada and Mexico, well, he's also floated the idea of universal tariffs, although he said that the U.S. is not ready for that. So is he, having a change of heart? Is he facing resistance from his own cabinet and his own business people?
Well, I suspect there's a little bit of that. I mean, he does have Elon Musk as one of his key advisors, and Elon Musk has many interests in China. So the earlier talk of a 60% tariff on Chinese exports to the United States has been toned down somewhat. It's now 10%. And there's talk, as I said, of negotiations with the Chinese authorities. Let's hope that those talks, if they do take place, are constructive, because I don't think the world will do well with a further intensification of the trade war between China and the United States. But as far as Canada and Mexico are concerned, I think that too is extremely worrying. I mean, many Asian producers that invested in Mexico in the hope of coming under the US, Mexico, Canada trade agreement are now potentially facing substantial tariffs on their exports to the United States. So a lot of their investments are in jeopardy, and that does not bode well for them for the future, and it does not bode well for the growth rate of these very important three North American economies.
Vikram, now one of the notable executive orders has been focused heavily on sweeping border crackdown and mass deportation push. How do you think this will play out in the coming weeks, and what kind of impact do you expect to see on the ground?
Well, the latest news is that apparently ICE agents, that is the immigration agents, federal agents, are already preparing to arrest illegal immigrants, especially those with criminal backgrounds. Apparently, some cities like Denver and Chicago are bracing for this action. And of course, as you noted earlier, one of the Trump executive orders has declared a border emergency, which has given the federal government wide authority, first of all, to build a border wall and to provide the finances for it, but also to immediately stop any further applications of asylum by potential asylees or refugees, and certainly completely stop any immigration over the southern border. So this is a very drastic step, but frankly, it's a step that's been expected because Trump talked about it during his campaign ad infinitum. So this should not surprise anybody that he's actually taken this step.
Okay, so, some of them are facing legal hurdles already. 22 Democratic-led states filing lawsuits to challenge that birthright citizenship. Which other of his executive orders you think are likely to face challenges in court?
Well, I suspect many of them will. Whether it's going to be on internal security issues, whether it's going to be on immigration issues, whether it's going to be on, even the executive orders that are renaming the Gulf of Mexico now the Gulf of America. I think it'll just be a question of time before you'll see court challenges on these executive orders. I mean, the reason why the birthright citizenship executive order has been challenged almost immediately is because it is a direct attack, if you wish, on the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. And it's not 2 states, I think it's about 18 states that have introduced challenges, along with a few non-state participants as well. So I expect that the challenges will multiply over the coming weeks.
So do you think Trump is better prepared and positioned to navigate these legal risks and constitutional challenges, and perhaps having learned from the experiences of his first term? Or do you think these issues will continue to pose a significant vulnerability throughout his presidency?
Well, absolutely. I think he's much better prepared this time around than he was in his first term. He has an outstanding chief of staff. He has put together many members of his team who have experience. There are some, of course, that still have to be confirmed, and there are questions about their capabilities. But generally speaking, his team this time round and the process this time round has been far better organized, has been far better prepared. And I think now he has a Supreme Court which has a very significant conservative bent. So there's a likelihood that many of these challenges could possibly fail at the level of the Supreme Court. It's going to be the courts that are going to decide whether these executive orders stand or not. It's not going to be Congress, because now both the lower and the upper houses have Republican majorities. So it's very likely that all of these issues are going to be settled in the courts. And the courts, certainly at the level of the Supreme Court, is going to be quite sympathetic to the position of the Republicans.
Right. So, while that is something he can control, there are others that he can't. For example, a Reuters Ipsos poll found that 60% of Americans did not want Donald Trump to pardon all of the people convicted for the Capitol riots. And then that same poll also found that Donald Trump is starting his presidency with 47% approval. First off, is Donald Trump's approval rating high or low? As he starts his second term compared to his first term, maybe. And how, his divisive executive orders, like the one on pardoning the rioters, could put his approval ratings in jeopardy?
Well, he certainly has a significantly high, I mean, a very high approval rating. For the first time, I think, in his including the entire first term, his approval ratings are greater than his disapproval ratings. So he's certainly starting on a high. And there is, as far as the pardoning of the rioters and commuting their sentences is concerned, now that he's announced that all 1,500 or so are going to be pardoned or their sentences commuted, it has taken the Republican establishment by surprise. Literally just yesterday or a few days ago, the vice president said that those that had been sentenced for violent crimes during the January 6th insurrection would not be pardoned. But lo and behold, they have been pardoned. So it's clearly, it's Donald Trump that is in the driver's seat. He is not necessarily going to take the advice of even his vice president. He's not going to take the advice of many of his advisors. And we're going to have to be on the edge of our seats as this goes forward. I think as far as approval ratings are concerned, certainly the pardoning of these 1,500 insurrectionists or those who've been found guilty of various crimes on January the 6th, will play very well with the Republican base, with the MAGA base, and that does count for a very significant part of the U.S. population. So I wouldn't see a quick any change in its approval ratings as a result of that particular action, even though it has surprised many of the cognoscenti in Washington. I think the fact that he's started his presidency with such energy, with so many actions, is going to play very well with the Republican base.
All right. Vikram, thank you very much for your time and your insight this morning. Vikram Nehru, distinguished practitioner-in-residence at Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies.